No, if you don't shout into the void at least once, you might as well not have sent the first email.
Welcome to Dirt NC, where we talk all about the places and spaces of North Carolina and the people who make them awesome. I am your host, Jed Byrne. Throughout my career in real estate development, finance, commercial brokerage, engineering, and construction, I have covered just about all facets of the real estate and land use ecosystem. This show is an opportunity to not only share what I've learned with you, but to also introduce you to my friends who are doing truly transformative work and sharing their stories. With each episode of Dirt NC, my goal is simple. I want you to walk away learning something new about land use. I promise to keep it simple and straight to the point. If you ever have any questions for me, feel free to reach out on Twitter at OakCityCRE. Now let's jump in. So today I had the chance to speak with Asa Hecker, who is a first-year MBA student at UNC Kenan-Flagler. We first crossed paths when he was networking as a student. He reached out to start up a conversation about my experience with development in Raleigh, and we have kept in touch since. He is currently at his internship with Realco Capital Partners here in Raleigh, and I wanted to bring him on the show because even though he's only got a few years of experience and is kind of in the middle of his transition in his career through his MBA program, I think he brings some real great insight into networking for those looking to transition into a career in real estate. And we really get into a few different aspects of networking advice, how to make sure you're not being overly persistent when you're networking with folks, and then he also shares his secret to staying organized with his outreach. But first, I wanted to start off with a little two truths and a lie so we could get to know Asa better. If you're ready, would love to hear your two truths and a lie, and we'll try to suss out the...
I'll start with I won the trading contest during my Wall Street summer internship.
Okay.
I made my high school basketball team, varsity team, my freshman year.
Okay.
And my brother is addicted to chocolate.
Okay, define addicted.
Has withdrawal.
Like cold sweats and headaches?
Yes.
Okay, and then basketball team is freshman. I think that's pretty doable. I think chocolate is pretty easy. What was the contest? So you won. I can believe that, but what were the parameters of the contest?
Everyone gets $10 million. Everyone gets 5 days, Monday to Friday. Who makes the most money?
Is this real money?
No, paper. Yeah.
Monopoly money.
Yeah.
Okay, how much did you make?
Oh, gosh. That's a good question. I think I probably doubled the money.
Doubled your money in $10 million in 5 days.
Maybe, you know what? I don't remember how much I made. That's actually a great point. I have no idea how much I made, but I did make the most.
Okay. So you made so I got to call BS on that one because I think doubling your money in 5 days, if that were true, I would have quit my job, taken my last paycheck, and gone and doubled that a couple times over the rest of the summer and wound up with like $1 billion.
Well, you better hope that the German Bund did exactly what it did in those 3 days.
Okay, so I'm wrong. That is not the lie.
It's not the lie.
Oh, okay. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
All right. Then which one's the lie?
I actually never played basketball until freshman year of college. I was a garbage athlete growing up. I love basketball now. But I didn't touch a basketball until I was 18, 19 years old. So I would have.
That is a good lie.
I would have not made the team.
That's fair. No, that's a good lie though, because it's got a seed of truth, which is a good. If you're going to lie, I don't condone it. I don't advise it. But if you're going to lie, that's a good way to do it. So, thank you for that, Asa. If you would though, please tell us a little bit kind of about yourself and really just kind of how you introduce yourself. Yeah. In the kind of business real estate context.
Absolutely. So usually I start with, I just say I work in real estate and then peel back layers until the person seems disinterested. The first layer is commercial real estate, not residential.
Okay.
So we're talking office buildings, apartment buildings. And then, if they're interested, I'll speak to them about, this summer I'm working on student purpose built apartments specifically, but by then I've usually lost them.
And who's that with for your summer internship? Who are you working for?
Oh, yep. So this summer I'm with Realco Capital Partners. They're based in Stamford, Connecticut, but myself, a VP and a principal are here in the Raleigh WeWork.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And thank you for hosting us here today.
Of course.
It's a beautiful space. This is not sponsored by WeWork, but I do approve of the WeWork space. And then you said office. Do you have real estate experience prior to going to get your MBA?
Yep. So I spent 4 years with Wells Fargo right out of undergrad, but 2 of those 4 years were specific to hotel lending.
Yeah, perfect. And then what's the hope post internship? What is your long-term hope in real estate?
So I would say that one of the reasons I got into real estate was because I'm a big fan of work-life balance, and my experience at Wells Fargo coupled with my undergrad business degree, and then granted it was remote, but you throw a year of an MBA program on there, you get a lot of exposure to what's out there in the business world and everyone uses the word culture, but it's a real word, and what is culture? That's dependent on the workplace. But I was looking for a firm that would offer me relatively good work-life balance. It's not to say there aren't long days, but if you want to go to the gym, no one bats an eye. I was looking for that, and typically those are small firms.
When you got, I guess, interested in pursuing your MBA, was that part of the equation? Like, did you know for sure about the culture you were seeking about, or is that something you learned as you go? I
would say I fell into real estate a little bit simply because after my 2-year experience it was municipal bond, kind of capital markets, investment banking services at Wells, knowing that wasn't where I wanted to be, but knowing I was in a great spot being at a large firm with a lot of opportunity. I just networked internally, and it just so happened that there were 2 positions that, and I know you'd mentioned this before, sometimes it's important to see the bigger picture and understand that it's okay if you go lateral or even go down. I took a 40% pay cut, jumping from my kind of IB, whatever you want to call it. It was a mishmash, and it's a conversation for another time. But they called it IB, and they paid you like IB. And it's important to see the bigger picture, especially when you're young in your career, and understand that everyone says the career path isn't linear, and there's a reason why everyone says that. So that's a perfect example of where it wasn't linear. It actually went down. But the people I was working with were great. And I ended up learning just a tremendous amount. Underwrote a hotel. 18-year-old Asa would have never believed that, 24-year-old Asa would be underwriting a, $50 million hotel in San Diego. Yeah. It's very strange, but fun. And that's the beauty of it.
And that's, I think, right. Whether it's a step down, step across, if you're going full steam at a great clip in the wrong direction, it's still the wrong direction, right? So sometimes you do have to step back, reset, make sure you're heading where you think you want to go. And that can be tough and challenging, but I think ultimately, that's kind of, everyone in life is kind of just trying to figure it out. Like, nobody has it set from day one. But
and the ones that do usually change course.
Right. Or they're just lying to themselves.
Yep.
And so you went back to Kenan-Flagler to get your MBA, which is kind of how we cross paths. You're now a student between first year and second year. You've got this internship in Raleigh, doing what you want to do. What would you say it was kind of, what advice either were you given or do you give to people when discussing or thinking about, I want to get into real estate development, or I want to get into investing? What's the advice that you give, or what was the good advice that you got?
Absolutely. I would say, well, most things start out as simple as you should just read what the industry kind of folk are reading.
Yeah.
I don't remember if anyone gave me this advice. They probably did, but early on, I subscribed to both the Charlotte and the Triangle Business Journals.
Nice.
And not a plug for
not
the
sponsored
service, but yeah. And there's, I think, an important thing to note as well, as if you're getting say a newspaper, you don't have to read every story, but the stories you do read, I hope you're interested in them. I would say start learning local development projects, even if you want to be in the investment space. I take that back. There are several news stories about investments as well. But what I have been typically drawn to is the new developments that are in a city because they signal growth, they signal excitement. I would say, ask yourself the basic questions around why the developer feels there's outsized demand for their project. And even start reaching out to folks by guessing their email addresses. Ask these folks about their day-to-day, what challenges they face on the job. I mean, most people, if they love what they're doing, then they love to talk about what they do.
Yeah.
And what better way to learn than from the people that are doing it? It takes a little bit of courage to not have someone respond to your email, but not all that much courage.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that's how we originally connected when I was at Capital Associates. And I would absolutely echo that advice is whether you have the background in real estate or not, reading the articles, finding out who the kind of movers and shakers are, why they're deciding what they are deciding and which direction they're going, understanding the language and kind of, development in real estate, I don't think is rocket science. And so if you can kind of get a grasp of the lingo and kind of what people are talking about, it really makes you pretty well informed to go into those meetings. And then again, absolutely, it's at least in Raleigh, in my experience, in the last 8 years, it's extremely easy to get meetings with people. I mean, if you reach out, and again, the thing on guessing the emails is great because oftentimes you don't know someone's email, but you could say, okay, well, I know someone, if I Google that email extension, it tends to be first initial last name.
That's
or
right.
First name _last name or first name, and you can guess. And if you get it wrong, usually it just kicks back and says, this is not a valid email address. So you can keep guessing. There was actually a website somebody in my class found and shared.
There's a few now. Almost all the ones I've found require subscriptions.
Okay. Well, this was it would like test and it would just do that. So it would ping all the different email servers. But no, that's good advice, right? So if you can get a meeting with somebody, then you have something to talk about. And of course, and absolutely agreed from my side of the table. People like talking about what they do and things that they care about. And so if you're reaching out and say, hey, I like your project, I'm interested in your company, they'll absolutely talk about the one step further I would go for you, and this is unsolicited advice for sure, but the hard part, and this is something I think you're good at, the easy part is getting the meeting. The easy part is starting the conversation. The hard part, and where I think 95% of the value is keeping in touch with people and staying in front of them. Because again, most people aren't hiring that day. They're not starting a new project that day. But in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, there's a lot of I think value in keeping up with people, but it's challenging. And then again, you never know where it's going to go. So I do think that's great advice.
Absolutely, I would echo that. The only reason I ended up at Realco was perseverance and the knowledge that there's always recruitment next year. That's specific advice for the MBA candidate that's in their summer internship. But at the outset, from a networking perspective, you should hope to interview with as many people as possible. It doesn't have to be a job interview. It can be an informational interview. You never know who you might click with, and the important thing is following up.
Yeah. What do you think was kind of the biggest, what led the most to your success in finding an internship, do you think?
It was the perseverance.
Yeah.
This, again, will be advice specific to folks recruiting for real estate in an MBA program, but everyone tells you that the cycle is late. I'll tell you that I interviewed for a job in November. That's arguably, kind of like the investment banking consulting timeframe. And
so November would be early for a job in June.
Very early.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, granted, again, like the investment bankers and consultants in the MBA program do recruit in September and October, and they have their offers locked up in November.
Must be nice.
But yeah, well, it's also you really don't enjoy that first 2 or 3 months
Right.
of school. Oh man, but everyone's in it together, so I did not envy them.
Yeah.
Coming from a bank, I knew exactly what they were going through. So no, thank you.
So what was it? Because I do think because I've given the persistent advice too. I think it's a good thing, but I think the immediate fear is, well, if I'm persistent, I'm going to be annoying, or people don't, this person doesn't know me. Why, if I just keep reaching out if I'm persistent? So what do you think is maybe some advice or a key to success on being persistent without, I won't say being annoying, but the negative side effects or potential side effects of persistence?
People describe it as like a squeaky wheel. Squeaky wheels are annoying. Yeah. So, you don't necessarily want to be a squeaky wheel. Certainly keeping a list, and on that list, having a little note section that says the last time you emailed them.
Yeah. And that's to keep from over emailing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So for some, and I could not, relate to that question more. Everyone's worried about that. That's actually probably everyone's biggest concern when they're emailing a complete stranger.
Yeah.
Is this why would this person give me the time of day?
Especially if you didn't get the response initially.
Correct.
Right. So I'm following up. Like,
yeah.
am I just shouting into the void?
No. If you don't shout into the void at least once, you might as well not have sent the first email.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you and I have missed emails before. Mm-hmm. It happens. Everyone's human, especially if you're emailing a hotshot developer. Mm-hmm. Chances are they're seeing a few emails in their inbox every day. Never be ashamed about the follow-up. Just make it a polite follow-up. Don't take it personally that they haven't responded, but always, always, always follow up if they haven't responded once. I would say give them the courtesy of, depending on who they are, and use your best judgment, but I would say you could wait 3 weeks and follow up again. I think that's super reasonable. I think anything less than 2 you would be considered annoying because they don't owe you their time that badly.
Well, that's actually one of the things that somebody told me one time, which I use to this day, not just for meetings, but is this idea of the no need to reply comment. So like I'll put that in the subject line if I'm reaching out to you and I say, Asa, can we grab coffee? ? No need to reply. So I'll put that right up in front because one of the things that I hate is when I email you, it's a micro obligation. Whether or not you've asked for it or just it's now something that's on your mental plate that is it's a tiny burden. And again, my hope is reaching out to you is to connect, to bring value, for it to be a positive experience. And if I'm starting off with like a little just obligation, I don't like it. And again, I think if you get that off the front, like, listen, you owe me nothing. You don't have to respond. I'm not going to think poorly of you. It just no need to respond. And I've found that people tend to respond, and they see that and they understand that, and they do tend to get back to you. But also, it's just a nice way of saying, like, listen, I know this is from a complete stranger, and again, you don't owe me a thing. So that helped me. And again, it also takes the sting off of, I feel bad for emailing this person out of the blue. Right, so it's like, well, listen, I'm not actually asking for anything. Like, yes, there's a question. Yes, I'd like to grab coffee or lunch or whatever. But again, reducing that obligation I've found to be helpful for everybody. But also, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people get busy and they forget, and or something comes up or life. And more often than not, if people didn't respond right away or on the first time or the second time, I found that people in all earnest would say, "Oh, thank you for thank you for, I meant to do that, but the holidays came up, or I meant to get back to you." And this, and so I do think it's persistence is key. So I think that's awesome advice.
I would, and could not, echo that enough. I would say, like everything in life, on the other hand, there is such thing as too much persistence, and sometimes it's good to just kind of read the room. Yeah. I've certainly had some folks that I followed up with the knowledge that I probably wasn't going to get a response, just because of who that person was, kind of like, what that person's role was, the firm that person was at. And this was a firm that I felt I'd had some sort of ground with and may have an interview possibility. And, it's a competitive environment. And I guess my point being, if you think that person is giving you "I'm busy" vibes, they probably are. Right. Yeah.
And that's okay. Right?
And that's completely okay.
You probably want to work at the places where people are busy and there's a lot of exciting things going on.
That's right.
And your top priority is not responding to random strangers.
That's
on
exactly
the internet.
right. That's exactly right.
And so one last point on that, or question, you mentioned the list. Was that Excel? Was that
I love Excel, yeah.
So again,
Excel.
I think that's a fairly typical MBA thing, is we're all in Excel a lot, especially in the real estate program. But I do wonder, because I did the same thing. I still have Excel lists and lists that I keep. I got one right in front of me. I wonder if there's not an opportunity for like a recruiting job search CRM of, I don't know if that's like a Salesforce thing or again, not sponsored by Salesforce, but something, because I feel like we all do the same thing. And I don't know, but file that away for a business opportunity and I don't know, but I feel like we all have the exact same problem. Right.
It won't be me that's making that. So,
but it works. I mean, again, staying organized helps you to be persistent, gives you the confidence to reach back out, know who you've talked to, know what you're talking about. So I think that's great advice.
One thing that really was detrimental, I would say, to like the first few months when I was in the program was putting too much reliance on, my own kind of storage mentally. Mm-hmm. To maintain this kind of like, because if you're doing your MBA right, I mean, you're emailing a lot of people and you're having a lot of conversations because there's only, this 2-year period where you can say, hey, I'm a student, please talk to me. And you're going to get that is great advice that I've gotten several times is while you're a student, use the student card.
Play the student card.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll agree with that too, but I will stress that while you lose the student card in May of 2022,
that's right.
If you keep on the networking kind of hat, you'll find, just in the long, networking and relationship really is what it boils down to, especially in real estate. It's a long game. And I'm shocked, both positively and negatively personally, where there were people that I reached out to when I was a student, and then I see them at a conference 6 years later, and it's like, oh shoot, you fell off my radar and I just completely lost touch. And just imagine if 6, 8, 10 years later I'd kept up that relationship and we'd kept up that relationship. Imagine the possibilities, because then there are several other people in the room who I did keep up with every year, and you see these great opportunities come from it. Because again, maybe for you it's internship, and then it's full-time, and then it's job 1, 2, but it's a pretty small world. And so, right, you'll lose the student card for sure, but those relationships, I think, can be beneficial and will be beneficial for a very long time. So it's definitely still a long game. I wouldn't worry, like, use the student card to your full advantage, but don't worry about losing it, because then you just have hey, I'm a recent post MBA, and then hey, thinking about switching jobs, or hey, I've got this 5 years of experience and I want to try something different. You get other cards, I guess is my point.
I couldn't agree more. It's a great excuse to kind of light a fire under your butt while you're there for those 2 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which probably is what I'm using it for.
Right.
Yeah. But to your point,
you got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Full-time career. So you're using geography as a criteria or filter for full-time. What other kind of full-time career search advice?
Apologies,
What do you think about that?
Most people would say you shouldn't use geography, and that's where I was trying to get with that. Most career advisors, certainly in the business school and real estate specific, because you can always re-recruit. And an internship in Atlanta does not mean you will necessarily work full-time in Atlanta. And you could have a tremendous summer experience in Atlanta and take that to New York.
Yeah.
However, I got this advice, and granted, I'm a bit of a special case in the sense that I knew I wanted to be in Charlotte or Raleigh. Not everyone knows they want to be in a certain geography, but if you know you want to be there full-time, you should do everything in your power to land your summer there, because that's where you'll be building your network.
Right.
And I actually, surprisingly enough, did not get that advice as often as I think I should have, but one person gave it to me and it stuck with me. And lo and behold, it paid off. I got my offer very late.
Yeah.
Very late in the cycle. But a lot of people get their offers late in the cycle, so don't let it be a discouragement. If your cylinders are firing on full blast and you're doing everything in your power, there's always a development shop or an investment shop in May that's still going to be looking. And to your point, I think we talked about preparation and
opportunity meet.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that again, I had the same geographic constraint for my second post MBA position. But it can go both ways. So like I would absolutely, if you know you're going to wind up in Raleigh or want to wind up in Raleigh, or in my case, it was, we were living in Raleigh. I needed to be in Raleigh. I wasn't going to move away. Right. The best job in Atlanta, the best job in DC or San Francisco doesn't help me. The flip side to that though, is I've definitely seen success in people where they were strategic about the job in New York or DC or Chicago or Raleigh or wherever has something about it that will help me in my long-term goal. And so I think if there's a strategy behind it, I think that works. I would tend to agree with you though, that I'm a little bit leery of the advice of, hey, just because it's a bigger market or a better job or a better shop, that's going to help you in this other market. I don't know that it always transfers. It certainly can, but again, I think that you're better off if it's a strategic time and strategic engagement than just, because it's New York, it's better, or because it's firm X, because it's Google, that's going to help. And maybe with Google that is the case, but no, that's right. Everybody's search is different, everybody's advice is different, but I do think that is good advice for thinking about long term. So what is it about Raleigh and Charlotte that put that up on top of your list?
I spent 4 years in Charlotte after undergrad and absolutely loved the city. I had the option actually to either join Wells in New York or Charlotte, and it was a no-brainer because I'd spent the summer trading German buns in New York and learned what cost of living meant as an adult. So I picked Charlotte and I loved it. The weather's great. You're close enough to the mountains. So you can get a lot of good hikes in. But Raleigh got the same thing. City Oaks, plenty of trees. Big green guy. I need grass and trees.
You need outside?
Yeah.
That was one of the things, so wholeheartedly agree. Obviously I'm biased towards Raleigh, but lived in Charlotte. Agreed that North Carolina is fantastic for all the reasons you mentioned, but it was funny, when I was at Kenan-Flagler, it's kind of my first time being around international students for any real length of time. And that was one of the takeaways, is everybody was like, there's animals. Not everybody. Certain people from certain major metropolises were like, there's animals and squirrels, and you see deer, and there's green everywhere. Like, what is the deal with all these trees? You forget, right? Everybody doesn't have access to that all the time. So that is, one of the things. Again, I'm extremely biased, but I love that here. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what it is that you think makes someone a good candidate for a full-time MBA if they're interested in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get real world experiences as quickly as you can. It took me 2 years to land in a real estate role, and as I mentioned earlier, it was a little bit of happenstance. It was what happened to be open at the time, and I got lucky. But it's an exciting area, and those real world experiences, like when I worked at Wells in hotel lending, those are real deadlines with real consequences that I was responsible for the treasurer receiving, some document that she needed. And I kid you not, she's running, a multi-billion dollar real WP Carey. I mean, it's a big company. There's a lot of pressure there. I'm 24 years old, and I had to call her up and explain to her how I needed her personal address. It's just things you don't really expect you'd be doing. But if you're coming right out of school, there's just a level of conduct that certain industries and services hammer life skills into you that can make you a big asset for an MBA school. And it's no shock that I believe the sort of traditional timeline is most MBA candidates have 2 to 4 years of real world experience, and that's not a coincidence.
Well, and again, I would agree with that, because I think even in areas where you don't have the experience, right? If you're doing a marketing case, just simply having that real sense of urgency of like, if you make a decision, there are repercussions. And so again, you're reading about a case, some company you've never heard of, some industry you've never been in, some country you've never been to, but it makes it much more real and impactful. And I think you can internalize those lessons better if you can connect to and say, okay, well, if we mess up this project, those results hit the P&L and we're going to hear about it at the quarterly meeting, so it translates. You can, with real experience, you can translate, you can kind of leverage that to expand into the lessons of school, which is helpful. And since your experience was different from mine, I'll kind of add a tack on question to that of how important do you think for someone who wants to exit their MBA in a real estate role, how important do you think previous real estate experience is to making that exit?
I think if you really want to work in real estate, it's not that important. If you want to impress people, you don't necessarily have to have it on your resume, but you should become, like I mentioned before, a student of the industry. Start learning how developers and investors think, and start developing your own, no pun intended, your own perspective and take on certain asset classes or certain submarkets. It makes you a much more attractive candidate if you're able to demonstrate if I wouldn't call it natural personal interest, but active personal interest. You're clearly taking the time to either learn about that firm and what they do, or that submarket that the firm owns a property in that they're familiar with, and you can relate and show your ability to potentially add value to their organization, because you've spent the time understanding what their organization does.
Right. And right, I think you haven't. I mean, I think it goes both ways. I definitely had classmates who had previous experience and were, very impressive and smart and driven. It was good for them, and I think good for their employers that they had that experience, but also having that kind of outside perspective, right? So you can bring some different market knowledge or different viewpoints to your role and your background. I think that makes a unique case for why you think a deal is a good deal, or why you think a project is a good project or acquisition. So right, I think that's great advice. That's kind of the end of my questions. Is there anything that we didn't discuss that you wish we had talked about or wish I had asked you?
No.
Hit it all?
Yeah, I think we hit it all.
Awesome. Well, Asa, thank you for your time.
No, Jed, thank you.
I wish you the best of luck in the rest of your summer, year 2.
Yeah.
Look forward to staying in touch. And thank you for your perspectives. This was great. So I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. If you know anyone who is thinking about transitioning into a career in real estate or thinking about going back to get an MBA, I would highly recommend that you reach out and share this episode with them, because I think they have a lot they can get from it. As always, I'm so grateful that you have chosen to share this time with me. If you ever have any questions about Dirt NC or any land use related issues, you can reach out to me on Twitter at OakCityCRE. Also, if you're looking for a simple and straight to the point weekly update on commercial development in Raleigh, you can subscribe to my newsletter at www.oakcitycre.com. Until next time, thank you.